Hello! The discussion this week revolved around the social, cultural, and economic trends of the 1920s leading up to the catastrophic stock market crash in 1929. There have been some great discussion posts to this end. Please spend some time reading your colleagues' work. I've supplemented in places with some footage and a few links to enrich and augment discussions. I was glad to see that Amber and Frank wrote that the 1920s was the decade that actually started the 20th century, and indeed they are correct. Most historians note that we cannot really feel the full flavor of a century until we are at least 10 years into it, and that would take us into the 1920s. From there, many of you pointed accurately and astutely to the hallmark characteristics of that decade. Kaya and Charles and Daniel did some excellent writing on the concept of tolerance and intolerance. Daniel and Charles' discussion of Du Bois and Booker Washington and that debate which would define the African American journey to desegregation later in the century was absolutely outstanding. Kaya noted that the African Americans expatriated to Europe and expressed their purposeness via the Harlem Renaissance. In addition, many African Americans left the South by the hundreds in a movement known as the Great Migration. A few of you really expressed a great understanding of the market forces at play throughout the decade and leading to the crash, which I explained in detail in someone's post. I think it might have been Al's. So try to, as you're looking through the post, try to look that one up. It will be hard to do some of your writing justice here, but I'll try. James mentioned that aspect of the Fordney-McCumber Act, and I mentioned I really appreciate your use of key terms, working through those key terms. But in James's post, he noted that the Fordney-McCumber Act encouraged international trade, which you need to keep in mind that these actions of the federal government were really profound throughout the decade. And keep that in mind when we think about throughout this decade, the Japanese in Asia were searching for international trade partners and being ignored. And this is a key factor leading up to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And also the Fordney-McCumber Act would be pretty important during FDR's legendary Lend-Lease and cash and carry programs, which you're going to be bumping into next week. Hannah appeared in multiple posts and discussions, providing input on the economic conditions throughout the decade. It was nice work there. I saw many valuable discussions on the passage of the 18th Amendment, which, as you know, provided the right to vote for women, but also how activities in the burgeoning consumer culture profoundly changed the lives of American women. Zach and Tiffany, Jennifer and Kamisha had some particularly interesting views in this regard. Other key trends mentioned by Patrick, Hannah, Al, and John were the profound immigration sentiment as expressed by legislation pointed out by the Chinese Exclusion Act and the National Origins Act. You could go to those posts and you'll see pretty vibrant fodder for debate or debates already started. Your midterm exam is posted. I've extended the due date to Friday at noon rather than midnight on Thursday because I woke up this morning to note that it wasn't available last night at midnight. So you have a little bit more extra time. I hope that you're able to manage that exam. It's meant to be an enjoyable exam. I think you're all going to do quite well on it. Thank you for your continued outstanding performance. You're all doing very well, performing at an outstanding level, and I send my congratulations to all of you as you're midway through this rapidly moving course.